Hi, this is Steve Rigolosi, and tonight on Forgotten Mysteries, I am very pleased to bring you The Judas Goat by Leslie Edgley, and this is copyright 1952 by the Crime Club. So stick around at the end of the review and we'll talk a little bit about the Crime Club and some fun publishing history about them. Take a look at the cover here. The cover is, rather abstract. To me, it seems a bit like almost like cave paintings from the prehistoric era. And I don't know that it's particularly well suited to the plot of the book, but I like it anyway. I think it's a really cool abstract cover. So let's talk a little bit about the author first, as we usually do. So Leslie Edgley was a man, and he was born in London and later relocated to Canada, spent a few years there, and then came to live in the United States and became a naturalized American for the rest of his life. And his output of novels was about, say, 15 of them under various pseudonyms. It turns out that he fell afoul of J. Edgar Hoover and was blacklisted as a communist. So much of his output was actually written under one of his pseudonyms, Robert Bloomfield. And just like more evidence that, the writers that we don't think we really have heard a lot about actually have these pretty storied histories. Turns out he was a successful screenplay writer too for television and wrote many scripts for Perry Mason, Bonanza, Rawhide, and like a lot of the classic TV shows of his era. So a multi-talented man. So let's get into the book review. Do you know how sometimes from the very first chapter, a book just chimes with you? It makes your fingers tingle and it makes your synapses fire a little bit more quickly, because within a couple of pages you think this is going to be good, because you've gotten all the right signals that this is going to be a good book, including interesting character, interesting first chapter, a plot that you haven't seen, before, something, a little bit different that is going to grab you. And particularly good writing. I mean, when you read a first chapter and you end that chapter thinking, wow, that was really well written, you're likely in for a really good time. And that is exactly what happened. I really enjoyed this book, although I had never heard of Leslie Edgley before. He, I believe, truly is a forgotten mystery writer. But after reading this book, I will definitely look for and read more by him. So get this set up. It begins with a man watching in the woods a funeral taking place where, a casket is being buried. And supposedly he is the man in that casket, but clearly he's not. And what he's done is he has had to go underground because he was the intended victim of a murder. It didn't happen. He managed to sort of outsmart the person who was trying to kill him and ended up killing that person by mistake. But it was, was all by happenstance. But he realizes very quickly that there are people out to get him. And he's got to kind of find a way to find out what's going on and, justify himself and live to tell the tale. His name is Dix Latham, which is kind of a cool name, right? Dix, short for Dixon. So in addition to that really great plot, right, of seeing yourself buried, there are a few things that are particularly interesting going on in this book. The first is that I think it's the first book I've read, or maybe the earliest book I've ever read, that pokes fun at the sort of spiritual scams of our time, or the motivational speakers of our time, right? Like, you know how you can watch these motivational speakers, and part of you is like, yeah, that's right. You go, boy. You go, girl. Yes, you're saying things that make sense. And then, I don't know, half an hour later, you think, God, that was bullshit. That is sort of what Dix does for a living in this book. Dix is the ghostwriter for a man named Fletcher Breen. And Fletcher Breen is this thinker, guru, who has created this whole industry called psychonamics with its own psychobabble vocabulary. And of course, you know, it's based in California, and it attracts wealthy kooks. And, you know, it's an empire. It's books, it's tapes, it's personal therapy using, you know, their own language. This would not be looked upon kindly by the American Psychological Association today, because every person who comes to their building for therapy or advice has their entire conversation taped without their knowledge. So imagine what you could do when you have all these people on tape telling you their deepest secrets. And that turns out to be an important part of the plot. And Edgley plays that really straight, right? He talks about psychonamics in the most balanced, you know, non-ironic language, which makes it all the funnier, right? Because you know that psychodynamics is complete horsepucky, and the author knows it too, and he's just letting you as the author go along for the ride as he makes fun of this organization. But the way Dix got hooked up with Fletcher Breen is that Fletcher is the idea man, but he can't really think, and he can't really write, and he can't really market. And Dix is a great writer. So he writes his books, which are bestsellers and make loads of money. He writes his presentations, you know, all the while knowing that it's complete and utter nonsense. But he's just got the gift for writing bull. And they get, you know, the business is very successful. And the third party in their little troika of their business is a man named Paul Storrs, who is a very amoral businessman who's just in it for the money and always looking for ways to get more money out of the business. And so the three of them have kind of a symbiotic relationship, although you can tell they don't really like one another very much. And Dix does something quite stupid, if you ask me. He wants more money. He wants to make more money. And so he goes to the other guys and he says, you know, pay me more money, or I might just be willing to go public with the fact that your whole organization is built on a foundation of nonsense. And if there's one thing I have learned from reading mysteries for the past 50 years, it is that becoming a blackmailer is a great way to get yourself killed. So that may be the reason why someone is out to get Dix, but we don't know for sure. But Dix is not a particularly moral character. In fact, very few of them are. And that's another interesting thing about this book. So a lot of us, myself included, when we read fiction, we want a character that we can root for, or that we can relate to, or maybe aspire to. So reading about amoral people who are the main characters throughout the book has the potential to be tricky and not work. But the best analogy I think I could make here is The Sopranos, the TV show, where the cast of that TV show is, you know, very, very flawed, you know, varying levels from, you know, kind of bad to really bad to awful. And yet fans of that show know it was absolutely the most riveting, psychologically penetrating TV show perhaps ever made. I mean, I'm not usually prone to exaggeration, but I really do believe that. And, as a person of Italian heritage, I was, very aware of the stereotypes that were being bandied about like mad in that TV show. But, I also saw some of the truth, right? I mean, let's just be honest about that. So reading this book is a bit like watching The Sopranos or any other Netflix series where the characters are really flawed and problematic. I mean, I think another one that comes to mind is Breaking Bad, but there's so many of them. Anti-heroes have become the trend these days. And Dix Latham is a really good anti-hero. He is out for himself. He's a serial philanderer. He's married to a woman, Minna, and they end up separating a couple times a year because she's always getting wind of his extramarital affairs. And he's kind of like, oh, what's the big deal? But she really loves him. And he's just, his morality is very, very slippery, as is that of the other people at Psychonamics. And it's kind of fascinating to watch these people at work, simultaneously knowing what the deal is, and at the same time kind of being willing to lie to themselves or not really admit to what's going on. A lot like, the Carmela Soprano character, how she had to, she couldn't ever fully admit what her husband was because that meant she would have to deal with it, and she was not in the mood to deal with it. But what happens through the course of the book is that, and this is not a spoiler, Dix really does kind of redeem himself, and I am a sucker for redemption in a book. Another thing that works really well in this book is that we've got this cast of really amoral characters, and then suddenly into the middle of it is dropped a character who is a true heroine. She is desperately trying to save her husband, who is on death row at San Quentin, who and his life is about to be taken via electric chair within a couple of days. And she is desperate. She will do anything to prove him innocent and get him off death row and save his life because she knows he is innocent. But for reasons unknown to her and the reader, he will not plead innocence. He will not tell the authorities what really happened in terms of the crime that he's accused of. And so you've got his wife. She kind of gets hooked in with these other amoral characters, and she shines all the more because she is so selfless and so willing to do anything that she has to do to save her innocent husband from death row. Really just terrific to see a person with so much love and spunk and refusal to give up, until the very last minute because she loves her husband so much. And with her help, Dix kind of finds out, what happened on the day where he was attempted to be murdered, and also finds out what happened in terms of another murder that takes place in the book that Dix is also accused of doing. So what really sets this book apart is all of the things that I've just talked about and the writing. The writing is fabulous. So good, so sharp, so clean, so insightful, so understatedly witty. I mean, Leslie Edgley was a great writer. I can say that with no qualification whatsoever. So all of these things added up to a book that I really enjoyed and that I can recommend to you wholeheartedly. I don't think it would be for everybody for the reasons that I've talked about. But if this sounds like your kind of noir read, then I can just recommend it with all my reader's soul. That said, it's not perfect. So I did the two things about it that maybe I would criticize are that there's coincidence. There's a little too much coincidence that moves the plot along, and I think the rules of mystery writing, promulgated by whoever, say it's okay to have one coincidence in a book, but no more than one. And there's several in here. So if coincidences piss you off, you probably will be pissed off by what happens here. Also, there are kind of leaps in logic that Dix makes where he comes to conclusions. And I thought, that's a good conclusion, but I didn't see how he got there. So whenever I hit a moment like that in a book, I always page back and, scan to see if I can find out if I missed something. And I did that here, and I didn't miss anything. There just are leaps of logic and conclusions made, accurate conclusions that you have to kind of go with as a reader, as opposed to seeing the thought processes or the processes of investigation that allow Dix to bring everything to a good conclusion. But, those are not uncommon characteristics of mystery novels. So I think a lot of us kind of get used to them and are willing to suspend disbelief because, if we're enjoying the book in other ways, we just think, it's not a big deal. And that's how I felt about this book. So Leslie Edgley, The Judas Goat. And as promised, I just want to talk a little bit about the Crime Club, which is one of the early and great crime imprints of in American history. So I want to show you some really interesting things about the Crime Club. So this is the back cover, and you can see this is the logo, the crime man, the man with a gun, okay? But if you look at him facing the other way, here on the inside back flap, you can see that the logo is composed of the letters that make up the word crime. So forgive the glare, and forgive me not getting this right, but you can see C-R-I-M-E. Okay, you can just, I'll just hold it up to you so you can see it. You can make out C-R-I, the arm is the M, and then the legs are the E. And so that's a really clever logo, which I think a lot of people don't really notice, including myself until, just a few years ago. Another thing that the Crime Club did was that they kind of categorized their books by these different subgenres with little icons. So you see there's an owl here. I can't read backwards on the screen. Let's see. I'll just show them to you. Okay. But you can see there are different things. I can't read them right now. But here, okay, so the magnifying glass is favorite sleuth. This exclamation point is something special. Then there's humor and homicide. Okay. So what they did was when they published their books, they assigned a logo to each of their books so that when you were reading the blurbs about other Crime Club books on their back jacket, you got to see what category they fit in, which I think would help most readers decide whether they would be interested in the book or not. So that was giving the reader a lot of information about books. And I have to tell you, I have found many great books and many great writers by looking at the blurbs for other books published by that house on the back cover. Publishers don't really do that so much anymore. Instead, they have a dozen worshipful blurbs, often by people you've never heard of, saying that this book is the greatest thing to ever be written in the history of the universe. And of course, it sets up expectations that the book can never meet. Whereas this, I think, was a very clever and effective way of marketing other books published by the publishing house. And, I wish we had more creative marketing around mystery novels today. I think, writers are pretty much left to their own to make a name for themselves on on social media and by going to conventions and working the circuit and, doing everything possible, unless they're already a big name or unless, they've signed a contract for $1 million advance and then the publisher has to shove them down your throat because they need to earn back that advance. But this was a different era of publishing, and as a reader, I really appreciated it. This book, The Judas Goat, that I've just read, shows that it has the this gun logo, and the gun logo means chase and adventure, and that is exactly what this book is: chase and adventure. So, in contrast, some of these other things are some of these subgenres are ones that I might not like very much, like humor and homicide. Tough to do that well. I probably wouldn't pick up those books. Something special piques my interest. Favorite sleuth, if I happen to like that sleuth, it's great to know. I guess that's what their way of labeling what today we would call a series character. Some like them tough is, noir, another favorite that I like, and character and atmosphere. So that could kind of go either way. Character and atmosphere only take you so far if you don't have a good plot. But it was a crime club, and in the early days, the stories were quite good. Later on, by the 70s, the crime club was a shadow of its former self. Its books were really not, it did not publish quality books. I mean, that sounds like a rather blanket dismissal, but it is. I don't know what the hell happened. They went from really a great publishing imprint to one that wasn't particularly good. And we could examine the reasons for that, but this video is already, oh my God, an ungodly 22 minutes long. But I did promise you a little bit of publishing history. So if you're in a used bookstore and you see older books by the Crime Club, check them out. They also, on their inside back flap, they listed the names of their writers. And some of them, are sort of lost to the dustbin of history. Some have been rediscovered, and some are people that never went out of fashion. So, for example, Marjorie Allingham never went out of fashion. Doris Miles Disney was quite big in her time, not so big anymore. E.C.R. Lorick has had a bit of a renaissance. Several of her books have been reissued by the British Library. So it's not only a really good book, it's also a nicely designed marketing piece for the content and the publisher and other books and other writers. And to me, that's good publishing. So Random House, if you ever want to hire me as, to start an imprint for you, know that this is exactly the kind of thing that I will be doing. I am pleased to steal from the best. Okay, thank you for listening. Check out the Judas Goat if you can find it. It's a 2 thumbs up book. Okay, thanks everybody and have a good night.